Hello, everybody. Sam Tom Miller here, and today we're going way back to 1968 with Night of the Living Dead. No Dawns, no Shawns, no remakes. The OG, black and white, even though color movies were pretty normal by that time. Guerrilla style, independent, original Night of the Living Dead. Now, people that read a lot of movie facts online will tell you that this movie was a big turning point in horror cinema in terms of the amount of gore that was on screen. But then those same people will turn around and say that the Saw movies are bad for doing the next step. A little weird. People like to say that this is like one of the first definitive zombie movies. And it certainly does kind of set the precedent for what zombies are in terms of slow moving, flesh eating, can only be killed by a shot to the head or something similar. But they're not actually zombies in this movie. They are referred to as flesh eaters and ghouls, but they don't actually ever say the word zombie. But for me, because I'm not sophisticated, none of that matters if it's not a good watch, right? Is this an enjoyable movie to watch? And for me, there's one big issue that keeps it from being as enjoyable as I wish it was. And it's not that it's in black and white. It's not the cast. It's not the acting. It's not the effects or anything like that. It's just my copy, because the law is fun and copyright law is fun. And because I'm one of those people that reads movie facts on the internet, apparently they changed the title of the movie right before they premiered it. And because of that, they failed to have a proper trademark displayed with the movie. And so, I knew this was in public domain, and I knew that that's why there's so many different collections that have it. And it's really easy to find it for really cheap. But I did not realize that it's pretty much always been in public domain, because they failed to copyright it properly. So the version I watched was from this cheap collection of a bunch of old public domain movies, 15 films that only cost a couple bucks. So not a great quality print. I also have another copy on this, which is who even knows where this came from? I think I got this used at a bookstore. And I didn't check to see if it was any better, but literally just looking up information about this on Wikipedia, you can watch the entire movie in the Wikipedia page, which I did not even realize was a thing. I'm sure there are different versions of it on YouTube. And I'm sure there are good copies. I read something about a fully restored 4K copy. So maybe at some point, I do want to watch the remake of this, and so maybe at some point I'll seek out a nicer copy. But mine's just not great, and so it's dark. It's really dark. I mean, it's black and white, but it's just not good quality, and so it's just hard to see a lot of the detail. But everything else I thought was pretty solid. It's a bit slow for me. It takes a while to get going, but then once it gets going, I was watching this as I watched most things at 1.5 speed, but there were a couple times where I actually slowed it down and watched it at regular speed, because there was a lot of dialogue going on, and my copy of this doesn't have subtitles, and I prefer to watch things with subtitles. So there were some things I actually had to rewind a couple times to watch, because I wasn't getting it clearly. Again, that might just be my copy. But I got some notes, so let's go through them. First of all, Johnny sucks. Johnny, the brother at the beginning of the movie, is complaining about taking flowers to his dead father's grave. What a jabroni, to borrow a word from Nando V Movies. So yeah, don't really care that he died right away. I mean, spoilers, but this movie's over 50 years old, and that happens right away. Then Barbara has this line where she's talking to Johnny, and she says something along the lines of, "I think you complain just to hear yourself talk." And man, that could be the tagline of this whole YouTube channel. Because all I do is complain about things, even when I enjoy them. And it's mostly just for me, because not many people watch these videos. So, I felt personally attacked by that line, Barbara. Talked about the ghouls versus the zombies. We get this whole, we get this whole scene, not even a scene, this whole plot development where they're boarding up all these windows. It reminded me of Signs. Obviously, Signs came after this, so I assume Signs took inspiration from this movie. But he's like boarding up all these windows, and I read this in the trivia before I saw it, so I can't take 100% credit for noticing this, but it's one of those things that once you notice it, it's really hard not to notice. He literally tells her, Ben tells Barbara, that they're safe and everything's been boarded up, but the room that they're in has windows that are not boarded up at all. And like, I thought that he was, because then he starts tearing up a table. So I thought, oh, okay, they're going to do these ones last because this is the room that they're staying in. But then he goes and starts doing stuff upstairs. And at no point do we see him actually board up these windows. I don't remember if later in the movie they are shown to be boarded up or if they stay unboarded the whole movie, because I didn't pay that much attention to those windows in particular. But it is kind of funny for him to say that line when literally there's windows in the very room that they're in. Not boarded up. And then I wrote show then tell. There's the classic rule of screenwriting is show, don't tell, right? You don't want your characters telling the audience what happened. The audience was to see it. And lots of movies are criticized for doing that backwards. The characters tell things, but the audience doesn't actually get to see it. Well, in this, we get it both ways with Johnny's death, because we see that whole thing happen, and then a few minutes later, Barbara says the entire scene again verbally to Ben, and it's just like, was this, it's one of those things where I'm like, was this done a lot back then? Was this done to add some time? It just seems very odd to literally have a character spend several minutes saying out loud on camera what we just saw. Not a shortened version of it. It doesn't the scene doesn't pick up after she's told him. We hear her tell the whole story again. A little strange. But my next note was about the cellar debate. So they're debating. There's these people in the cellar. I think, what's his name? Hooper. Mr. Hooper. They're debating about whether it's better to stay in the cellar or to stay up on the main floor. And at first, I was like, I don't know why Ben is fighting this so much. Like, Hooper's making a lot of good points about the cellar, and Ben says something about, I still think we're better off up here. And up to that point, he hadn't said why. And so I was like, that just seems like you just don't want to agree with this guy. But then he started explaining why, and he was saying that, there's no way to escape if you're down there, which I don't know how he knew that, because he wasn't down there. Some cellars you can get out of, but okay, we'll say he was right. I'm just talking about it's unlikely that they'll get in the house, but if they do, we have a chance to escape if we're in their house, but if they're in the cellar, there's no way to escape. And they go back and forth, and I was like, wow, horror movies don't have this anymore, where characters are actually talking and discussing and both making logical points. So many horror movies now, characters will just do stupid things and make stupid decisions, and if there's any kind of discussion at all, it's not logical and it doesn't lead anywhere. And so it was refreshing in an odd way, because this movie's over 50 years old, to see characters actually debate logically which option is best. And we never really definitively find out for sure. I mean, Ben does end up going into the cellar throughout most of the night, although the circumstances are different at that point. So I don't want to say that means he was necessarily wrong, because when he was making his arguments before, there were multiple people that could hold stuff off. So very, very interesting, which then tied into another note that I had later, which is some of the characters in this movie are actually smart and logical. And the scene when they're explaining their whole plan, that's the scene that I slowed down to regular speed and rewatched a couple times to see what the plan was. So they were going to make Molotov cocktails because they had kerosene and fruit jars in the basement, and he told the one girl to start cutting up sheets into small cloths. So they were going to throw Molotov cocktails to scare and distract the ghouls outside. And then while that was happening, while Hooper was throwing those from the top, Ben and the other guy, whose name I can't remember, was it Tom? That's my name. My dogs are making noises again. I don't know. I'll call him Tom. I don't know if that's his name. They were going to go to the shed, which they found the key to, or they found the key to the gas pump, which didn't end up working or being important anyway, but they thought of it at least. They had a plan. Gonna go to the gas pump to put gas in the truck, then bring the truck back, and then recoup, and then figure out another plan to get people to the truck. So, pretty solid plan. And I was like, wow, the characters in this movie are actually smart. And then they start doing the plan, and the lady, Tom's wife or whatever, is just like, nope, screw that whole plan. I'm going to Leroy Jenkins it out there with them. And she's directly responsible for the death of both her and her husband, boyfriend. I don't know if it says that they're married, but her jacket gets caught in the truck somehow. And Tom, I'm going to keep calling him Tom. I don't know if that's his name. He goes back into the truck to save them, which the truck gets set on fire. Sure. Was that Ben? I think that was Ben that did that, not Tom. So that part's on Ben. The truck being caught on fire, that's on Ben, I'm pretty sure. Or was it Tom that pumped the gas, but Ben laid the torch down? Anyway, doesn't matter. Point is, if that girl hadn't gone outside for absolutely no reason because she had no role to play out there, then they wouldn't have both died. And then who knows what might have happened. But I blame her completely. My next note. Starting a fight probably isn't the best idea. So, those two die. Mr. Hooper's watching from the windows. Ben comes back to the house. I think he comes back to a different door, or maybe Hooper had locked the door. It doesn't really matter, but he's struggling to get in, and he's calling to Mr. Hooper to let him in. And Mr. Hooper is like halfway in the cellar, not going out to help Ben. And so Ben breaks the door down, not down, but breaks it open, gets in, starts trying to block it back up, and Hooper comes back out to help him. And then Ben just starts beating the crap out of Hooper. And it's like, I get it. You're upset because he didn't help you. But like, I don't know if that was the same door or not. Right? And if it wasn't the same door, can you really be upset at him for not having that door ready to come in? Because that wasn't part of the plan. Also, B, the plan clearly didn't go as planned. And after that truck explodes and all those zombies are now out there with only you, I wouldn't say it's unreasonable for Mr. Hooper to assume that you're going to die and go back into the cellar as he wanted to do from the first place. Ben wouldn't have known from his perspective outside. He wouldn't have known how long Mr. Hooper was standing there in the doorway of the cellar, right? We know that Hooper stood there and actively chose not to go help him right away. But as far as Ben knew, he thought that Ben was dead, already went back downstairs, and was on his way back up and back out to help once he heard stuff at the door. So, I don't totally follow your line of reasoning there. But also, C, even if you did know that he chose not to help you, starting a fight is not going to make things better in the future. Because all that's going to do is make him more angry, which it does. Leads into more violence later. Leads into Hooper getting shot. But, like, Ben, what are you doing, man? Like, sure, he might have been not cool. You've clearly shown that you're morally superior to him. Because you already yelled at him for not coming up from the cellar earlier to help Barbara when she was screaming. But, like, these are some intense circumstances that Hooper's in. Give him a little bit of slack. And even if he didn't help you get in, he did then decide to come help you bar the door. when he could have just left you and barred himself in the cellar. So, like, just take a chill pill, Ben. That's all I'm saying. You took charge of this situation. You're bossing everybody around. You got to give him a little bit of slack. Not a whole lot. I'm not saying, give him hugs and kisses. I'm just saying, don't beat the crap out of him while you're still actively being threatened by ghouls. Then I just wrote, kids are the worst. So I know I've started this movie before. I don't know if I ever finished it. I don't think I did because, man, and we're getting into spoilers now, but when they get to that scene of, is it Karen? Is that the daughter's name? Just chowing down on Hooper. I was not expecting that, and I was not prepared for that, and I was delighted by how dark and twisted and messed up that is. And I read, because I'm one of those people that reads movie facts on the internet, I read that originally Hooper was going to turn into a zombie on his way down the stairs, and he was going to start eating his daughter's corpse. And then Helen, his wife, I can't remember anyone's names, but Karen's mom, I think the kid's name was Karen. I don't know. The mom, she was going to come down and find the father eating the daughter's flesh rather than the daughter eating the father's flesh. But apparently, George Romero, right? Not George Miller. I'm getting them confused. The director decided that would be too gruesome for this movie. To have a father eating his daughter's flesh and to have the daughter eating the father's flesh would be much, much better and less gruesome. I don't know if that tracks. I don't know if I buy that. I thought the image, especially the black and white graininess of it, of Karen just chowing down on him, was delightfully horrifying. And then she takes out her mother with the trough, which is pretty cool. And then we get to the ending. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a good depressing ending. There's a musical that I saw once where the cut and the act I thought was the ending, and I was thrilled because it was so, the implications were so horrific, but then there was another act, and it ended on a much more happy note. But like, things like, is it The Mist or The Fog? Whichever one with Thomas Jane, where spoiler alert for The Mist or The Fog, he like kills his family because he thinks that there's no way they're going to be saved. And then like 2 seconds later, he sees that the National Guard is there saving people. And so then at that point, he's out of bullets, so he can't kill himself. And one of my favorite endings of a movie of all time. It's so depressing. I love it. I love a good depressing ending. But man, this ending was so unexpected and like so just abrupt and out of nowhere